Just quickly before we start, there's always thank yous, and on functions like this, there are always lots of people to thank. So, firstly, I'd like to thank Gaynor from Drockenstein Stud, Gaynor Rupert, all the guests, the two Americans, and Michael are staying there. She's accommodating them, and it's very kind of her and Drockenstein, so thank you to Gaynor. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the stallion owners. It's because of them and their generosity that we can put on functions like this. So to all the stallion owners, from people without stallions, I speak on behalf of everyone, and we would like to say thank you for your generosity. And a lot of work goes into this. I'd just like to thank Wendy, who's the Cape Breeder Club secretary, for all her work. I won't make her stand up or anything because she's not that type of person, but she does a lot of work behind the scenes, and from us on the committee, we're very grateful for all your hard work. Wendy, thank you. Right, our next speaker is Robin Matthews. He's MD of Acuity Verification Services. They're based in Cape Town. He comes highly recommended, and he'll tell us about the updates to the BEE scorecard and where we can benefit in the breeding industry from BEE and education. Michael, thank you. Robin, sorry.
Thank you. I think, I've got. Thank you very much. Thank you to Catherine for inviting me. I'm going to keep it short. I've only got a few minutes. I'm going to try and push 11 years of legislation coming forth, well, actually since 2005 in 45 minutes, so please bear with me. Firstly, I'm Robin from a SANES accredited verification agency, Acuity Verification Services. So we are in the verification sphere. So what I'm going to try and do today is just quickly try and explain the new developments within the BEE arena, as well as the Agri-BEE sector code. And then I would like to focus on skills development, because I think fundamentally, if you look at a couple of months ago as well, when President Ramaphosa actually announced the YES program, there's a fundamental shift from any transformation perspective towards skills development. And this entire idea that companies, the rumors are running around in the industry where everything is just about ownership, that is not entirely true. So the whole objective over here is to give you a holistic perspective of what's happening. And like I said, 45 minutes is short, but please come speak to me afterwards if you've got any questions, or you can just get my details from Catherine. Okay, so I'm just going to have a quick introduction of why. Why BEE? I get it quite often where people say, why must I do BEE? What's in it for me? Also, I'm just going to chat about the elements. So if you go through a verification, what is the elements and what would you be measured against, as well as the skills development element, and I'm just going to break that down into, and then obviously from a verification perspective, what documents do they require, and what is pressure points. And I think the reason why I want to touch based on that is if you make use of consultants in the industry, or you're a SDF or you're skills development, you normally make use of these people, so that they need to be aware of what's happening in the BEE space as well, because that can have a direct, will have a direct effect on your company as well, or on your operations. Okay, so BEE, what's the effect of not having a BEE certificate, or what is the effect of having a BEE certificate? So BEE is not a statutory requirement. I would like to put that out there. It's not that someone is going to come. It's not required by company law. They're not going to say that if you don't have BEE, you cannot do business in South Africa. Okay, so it's not written into law. There's an act, and the act is governed, obviously, or the act governs legislation. It is, however, an integrated process. We saw since 2003, when the first set of BEE codes came about, up until currently, there's been a huge transformation agenda behind BEE. There's been a few developments, there's been updates, and BEE has evolved to actually becoming quite a professional industry. And I'm talking from BEE, professional industry, from a verification sphere, auditing, regulatory perspective. So please remember that since 2003, up until currently, they had time to change the BEE codes, which they did twice. Okay, so the BEE legislation has been changed twice since the inception of BEE initially in 2003, and they've just shifted the goalpost, which actually makes it quite clear that their agenda is quite very clear. And when I refer to there, it's obviously the government. It's like BEE is fundamentally important for them, and I think if we put all emotions aside, it is an important aspect within the South African context. Yeah. The amended codes, the amended BEE codes as well, which came about on the 8th of December last year, 2017, makes it very clear that transformation is a very high agenda on the government. If you look at it from the top to the bottom, they actually make it very clear that, you know, licensing requirements, etc., is going to depend on your BEE requirements. And if we have a look at, I've just put there a few examples. BEE is driven in the economy based on a number of principles. It's driven in the economy. It's not, like I've said, it's not a statutory requirement. Okay, so it's driven in the economy. Why? Purchasing. What is the status of my suppliers and the effect of my business? You, let's say a normal trading company, you obviously generate the income from customers. Customers say, I spend money on you. What is your BEE status? Because that's got a direct effect on me, on my BEE status. Licensing, we've seen this happening, especially in the agricultural sector. Liquor license, well, in the agricultural tourism sector, liquor licensing. The draft amended Liquor License Act, which we're still waiting to be promulgated, actually mentioned, if you do not fulfill, if you do not have a BEE compliance certificate, your liquor license may be revoked. If you think about the ripple effect of that, all wine farms, all restaurants, all liquor shops, all of that, their liquor license may depend on their BEE status. Water licensing. If you look at the agricultural sector, and some, well, we've heard it, they require level 3 for you to obtain a water license. So they are quite strict on that. And export license, I'll show you extract now from and the reason why I'm focusing on agriculture is because we're standing here today is, I'll show you an extract regarding the agricultural government gazette agreement that was formed between the Department of Agri and Fisheries and the EU regarding export licensing, especially, well, based on the agricultural sector for certain products. I'm not going to go through that. It's more like fruit, etc., but just to show you the intention where it's going. Government, do I work with government? If you work with government and you don't have BEE, it's going to be very difficult to generate business from government. If you look at the Preferential Policy Framework Act, the PPPA, and that is just the jargon which they use for tendering purposes, they've actually changed that and they made a specific stipulation to state that any government entity or department may input their own stipulations within a tender. So we're not only talking about the 80-20, 90-10 principle anymore, we're also talking about they can input and say ownership. If you look at Sunroll, for instance, I've heard, and I work with a lot of construction companies, for instance, where the Sunroll has said, you need to be a level 2 with 51% black ownership, otherwise we're not going to do business with you. Okay, so that is an extra requirement that government institutions may do. Customers, clients, and there I said, you know, I generate income from customers and from clients, from corporates, whatever the case might be. Do they actually say, I'll do business with you if you are X level? Okay, so it's not, once again, statutory requirements that drives BEE, it is the economy as a whole. What happened from the previous legislation to the current legislation is there's a few changes, and I'll explain that to you now, why this is really becoming a big factor in a business. Some industries, obviously, it takes a bit longer for certain factors to actually influence the business, but like if you're in manufacturing or you're in construction or tourism, BEE plays a vital role. If we have a look at the following government gazette, this is what I've been, which I referred to just now, export permits to the EU. They say the BEE status of applicants obtainable from a valid BEE certificate issued by accredited verification. That is to obtain an export permit. Yeah. So that's quite big. A lot of companies wasn't aware of this because this actually only came into action when the amended Agri-BEE code was gazetted, which was the 8th of December 2017. Here is the Liquor License Amendment Act, where they say the broad-based black economic level of compliance met by the RED. Now, they don't mention a specific level. There's different levels, but they just would like some compliancy. Okay. So if we just go back and we refer to black economic empowerment, or BEE, if I may refer to it as BEE. A lot of people take offense because they say it's narrow-based, but please, if I may refer to BEE, otherwise I'm going to say triple B, double E the entire time. But sometimes there's still confusion of what is classified as black. So black is not purely the color of your skin. Okay, so even though people think that is how we measure it, it's not. It's based on this definition. So it's all African colored and Indian persons, which are South African citizens by birth or descent, or were naturalized in South Africa prior to the interim constitution of 27th of April 1994. So technically, let's give you an example. A Zimbabwean came to South Africa in 1985. He or she stayed here forever, but they weren't granted their citizenship because of the regime in those years, and they are applying now. They can be seen as black because they could have become naturalized before 1994. So if a Zimbabwean comes to South Africa in the year 1998, they've obtained their citizenship, they will not be seen as black. Okay, because they are not black, African-colored Indian persons by birth or descent or naturalization. Unless their mom or dad was a South African citizen, okay, according to this definition. So I do get a lot of companies where they've got a pool of workers, and the workers consist 90% out of foreigners, and they think because the color of their skin is black, they can be seen as black. That's not true. Okay. So I think this was one of the biggest changes from the old legislation to the current legislation. They've stated there, all organs of state and public entities. So everyone, so when you ever deal with anyone in your local municipality and they say, we don't have to do BEE because we are exempt because we're a government institution, that is not true. Okay, that's a blatant lie. They have to do it. All organs of state and public entities, all entities that undertake any economic activity with all organs of state and public entities, or just any entity that undertakes any economic activity, okay, whether direct or indirect with any other measured entity. So it doesn't matter how small you are, how big you are, if you have an economic relationship where you derive income from each other, that's economic activity, BEE may play a role. I'm not saying it is going to play a role, it may play a role. Okay, so what happened with these changes, the government, or the DTI, the Department of Trade and Industry also, they launched the BEE Commissioner's Office. The BEE Commissioner is the sheriff of BEE. She's Advocate Zotman Ntuli, and you've probably read about them in the papers. They are investigating quite a number of big corporates for fronting practices like MTN, Nokia, etc. And they are actually, she has given all public entities and organs of state 6 months after their financial year end, or after their year end, they have to submit a report on their BEE compliance to her office. So what's happening, you can imagine the ripple effect. All public entities, all listed companies, they have to report to her office on their BEE transformation progress. So they're going to start, it's going to start filtering down. They're going to ask their suppliers for their BEE credentials, because that's going to have a direct impact on their BEE status. Those suppliers are going to go, and that's the snowball effect of BEE. And that's probably the biggest driven force behind BEE. So she's targeting the top of the crop, if I can put it that way, and that's going to just filter down. So if we think about all organs of state as well, so whenever you get to do with, or if you start on a transformation initiative and someone tells you, I'm exempt from BEE, that's not true. They may be seen as an exempted enterprise, which we'll discuss now. Okay. I know it's quite a lot of information, and I'll try and keep it concise to the point. If we look at the elements, in the previous codes of good practice, which was in effect up until 2013, technically, there were 7 elements. Depending on the size of your business, you could choose 4 or 5 out of the 7 elements, or you had to be rated on all 7 elements. So ownership was not actually a priority in that legislation. Okay, in 2013, they came and they said, we're amending the BEE codes of good practice. So that is the legislation that will be used for measurement purposes. Okay, and they said, we are taking the 7 elements and we're making 5 out of it, and ownership, management control, skills development, enterprise supply development, socioeconomic development, and those in red they refer to as priority elements. So they said, depending on the size of your business, etc., you have to comply to either all three of the red elements or one of ownership and or one of the other two. If you do not, you will be penalized the level. So you won't be deemed non-compliant. It's just you will be penalized the level. Okay. So if you don't have an ownership component and it's not 51%, it's not 70% that I've heard, it's not 26%, it's technically 10%, but if you don't have that component, the only thing is you will be penalized a level, so you'll forfeit a level. So I've said the elements indicated in red are priority elements. Okay, so failure to comply with that can result in the company being discounted in one level. So this is a major change that they've actually incorporated from the old legislation and the old codes to the new legislation. Now a lot of companies say, Robin, okay, I'm a small company, I'm a startup, I've only got a few workers, you know, I'm a broker, I've got a high turnover, low margin, whatever the case might be. If you look at the BBEE legislation, they use the following criteria to categorize you as a business, and they say, okay, exempt micro enterprise, if your turnover, so it's your turnover, it's not your gross profit, it's not your profit, it's your turnover. If your turnover is less than 10 million, then you don't have to be rated on all 5 elements, irrespective of ownership. So if you are less than 10 million turnover, you will get an automatic level 4 contributor level. And the only way by proving that is completing an affidavit. And you'll get a level 4, and level 4 is technically the level that you would like to be out in the economy, and I'll explain why. But if you've got 100% black ownership, you will be boomed up to a level 1, and if you've got a level, at least 51%, between 51 and 99.9999%, you will be at least a level 2. Okay, by just completing an affidavit, and that's what I'm stating there, obtain a sworn affidavit confirming your turnover and your black ownership. Okay, and the reason why they've incorporated this, they said, is to assist small SMMEs, small companies, from a cash flow perspective of paying huge amounts of money to get a proof of BBEE. Okay, so this is quite straightforward. So they've made it for companies with a turnover of 10 million or less, it's quite easy to get a BBEE status. You don't have to go through a verification process. Then they refer to the next batch of companies as qualifying small enterprises. So that is the companies with a turnover threshold between 10 to 50 million. Okay, they say you have to be evaluated on all 5 elements, unless if you've got 100% black ownership, then you will be boomed up to a level 1. If you've got at least the 51 to 99.99% again, you will boomed up to level 2, and you don't have to go through the verification. Okay, and it's only a sworn affidavit. As you can imagine, this is quite a loophole. A lot of companies use this to front, and that's why the BBEE Commissioner is quite busy. Okay. So a lot of people are using trusts as vehicles, etc., but the trust, there's no vested rights in the trust, and they claim to be this percentage black owned, but they're not, and the BBEE Commissioner is having a field of a day with those type of companies. So if you don't have, if you're between that threshold and you don't have 51% black ownership, the moral of the story is you have to go through a verification. Okay, and then you will be evaluated on all 5 elements. Quite interesting, they incorporate in the Act, any misrepresentation will constitute a criminal offense, and my question at the launch of the BBEE codes was, now who's going to do that? Who's going to report that? And they said, well, everyone, if you know your competitor is not a 51% black owned, you need to report it, and you need to go to court, and you need to go testify. So yeah, it's a bit of a chuckle because I don't think he's going to do that. And then you get your large enterprises, your generic enterprises, they're above 50 mil, and irrespective of ownership, you have to go through verification. People that's following the news, following BBEE, would probably have read in the media that they want to change that. They want to say if you are level, 100% black owned, you can get a level 1, and if you between 51%, you can get a level 2, even if your turnover is above 50 mil. That's in a draft comments. It's not going to happen. I attended a seminar from DTI, and they said it's not going to happen. Those companies will still go through a verification. They still need to obtain at least a minimum of a level 4, and then they will be boomed up to a level 2 or 1 respectively. Okay, so it's not that it's going to be a free-for-all for, so if you look at African Rainbow Capital with Patrice Motsepe, and they have 51%, they're not going to get automatic level 2. Okay, they have to go through a verification. Yeah, and then sector code thresholds are still applicable on that specific sector. Okay, if you look at the agricultural sector code, sometimes I get companies, they say, do I really have to be verified according to the agricultural or the construction or the tourism? Yes, you have. If you fall within the ambit of that industry, you have to be verified against that. That is the 5 elements. It's just quickly, I'm not going to go into detail. What is ownership? It's actually the effective ownership of a business. It's your equity. Okay, ownership can be done through various vehicles, and there's various ways of recognition. Private equity funds can be used. Trusts can be used. There's a lot of exclusion principles depending on the structure of your business. Okay, preference shares, depending, is there a debt coupled to it or is it the equity? So there's a lot of ways ownership. So ownership is quite complex, but at the end of the day, it's the effective equity in the hands of black people. Okay, and equity means, ownership means voting rights, economic interest, and their value needs to be realized. Okay. Management control, that's effective control of your business. Okay, it can be 10%, 20%, 30%, 50%, 51%, whatever the case might be. There is targets, but it's not only in terms from a director level, okay, because sometimes people say, I need to give my company away, and that's not true. You don't have to. But it's about your line functional. How is your line functional management structured? How's your senior management, your junior management? How's that structured? Not only your director's level. Okay, depending on the size of your company, if you are a QSE, for instance, between 10 to 50 mil, your directorship has got nothing to do with the BBEE scorecard. Okay, if you're above 50 mil, yes, then it does have an effect, but it doesn't have the biggest effect. So, so management control is not only about the control on a director's level. Okay. Skills development, that is the initiatives that it's training that you do, and in the previous legislation, it was only specifically aimed at black employees, so you had to have employees. What happened, there was a lot of companies that said, you know, I'm a niche company, I've got high margins, I don't have a lot of employees, so I can't actually train. You know, I can only train an employee so much, so what can I do, you know? So they've changed it, and they've actually made provision for black people. So they said any black person may be eligible to receive training, not only your employees. So that was a big change in the BBEE codes, and this is applicable in the agricultural sector code as well. So whatever I'm explaining here is applicable in the agricultural sector. Enterprise and supply development, that is actually the measured extent to which entity. So what is your BBEE purchasing power, if I can put it that way? So what's your supplier list? You spend money on suppliers, obviously you have to procure something or buy services or pay for services to generate income. Those suppliers that provide those goods and services, what's their BBEE ratings? So are you procuring from people that are BBEE rated or not? And that's a big challenge sometimes. Some supply chains makes it very difficult to make use of BBEE rated suppliers. If you look in the agricultural sector code especially, it makes it very, well, in the agricultural sector, in the industry, it makes it difficult. But there's provisions that they've made for that. The measures extent to which enterprise carries out supply development and enterprise development. Supply development, enterprise development, where have you as a company assisted a black-owned company over and above your normal business practice? So not only procuring goods, making use of them, what have you done beyond that? Have you, for instance, given them, you know, office space, place where they can store their equipment, mentoring and training, you know, assistance with the development of their business? So there's a lot of initiatives that can assist or can fall within that category. It's not, I've realized in my, we do quite a lot of business in the agricultural sector, that in the agri sector specifically, a lot of things is done. Okay, of these initiatives, but it's the audit trail that doesn't always accompany these initiatives. Okay, is it documented? Is it actually, can you prove that this has happened? And therefore, going back, it is quite BBEE is an interactive process. You have to, it's quite an admin burden. I mean, if you think South Africa is probably the country with the most red tape in the world, but I mean, it's like skills development and your employment equity, it's similar to that. It's an audit trail. You have to prove initiatives by means of evidence. And then your socioeconomic development, and this is the order of the agri-sector always complies to, and that is the extent to which entities carry out initiatives to contribute to its socioeconomic development to promote access to the economy of black people. Now, I'm not allowed to say this, please cut camera, but it's like donations. Okay, they don't like it when we refer to donations. Previously, people referred to it as corporate social investment. Corporate social investment is still there, but it's not socioeconomic development. It's very similar, but it's not always the same. Okay, by giving someone food is not socioeconomic development because you didn't contribute that to promote access to the economy. But to give training to someone or education, that is socioeconomic development. A soup kitchen will be corporate social investment. Okay, by actually contributing towards a school computers or something like that, that will be socioeconomic development, or whatever the case might be. If you've got a creche on the farm, if you've got housing that you provide to your workers, okay, at obviously a nominal rate, which is, well, all for free, then that can be counted towards socioeconomic development. Okay, so there's, in the agricultural industry, there's quite a lot of initiatives that can count within that element. It's just about proving it. Okay. So if we have a look at the, just quickly at the scorecard, we've spoken about the 5 elements, and we look at, it's the generic QEC, that's for normal companies. I've just tried to compare with the agricultural industry so that you can see where the agri-sector has actually, where they've made significant changes compared to the normal codes. So your ownership is 25 points for generic and QSE, so that's 10 to 50 mil. Your management control is 19 points, 15 points. Your skills development is 20 points, QSE is 30 points. So you can see there they've upped it a bit from the generic code. Enterprise supply development, it's 40 points, 40 the same, 25, 30. Okay, so there obviously 5 points from there they took over to there. And socioeconomic development point is 15 compared to 5. And that's a big change. Because bear in mind, if you want to obtain a level, your level is the amount of points to total points. It's not the points as a percentage of total points. So it's not a percentage, okay. So 10 points can mean 2 levels. So if you have a look at what's your BE recognition, so everyone always say, okay, so what does BE mean? And this is what it means. So there's 8 levels, and then there's a non-compliant. Okay. So if you look at the 8 levels, you get a level 1, which is the best, level 8, which is the lowest, and then non-compliant means you're not complying. Okay. But it's still a certificate. Okay, so people try to look at the loophole there and say, well, it is a certificate, so I am compliant to the BE Act, even though it's a non-compliant certificate. That's not actually true because the substance there is you're non-compliant. If you look at level 4 means it used to be between 65 and 75 points. It's now between 80 and 90 points, and that's 100% recognizable. So it doesn't mean your business is 100% black. Okay. It means that if I make use of your business from a supplier perspective, I purchase something from you, and I spend 1 rand with you, I can actually claim 1 rand on my procurement spend on my BE scorecard. Not claim the 1 rand back, but as a BE spend. Remember when I referred to the BE purchasing power? And that is what the recognition level actually refers to. So obviously the higher the level, the more you can claim. The lower the level, the less you can claim. Okay, so people like you. So when you're below 10 million, that's why I said you can automatically be a level 4, and that is actually what you would like to be in the economy, because that means whatever I spend with you, I can claim it back on my BE procurement. Okay, so that's quite important to just to understand this. And the reason why I said score currently, that currently should be previously, sorry about that. That was how it used to be in the past. This is how it's now. You can see the fundamental shifts in score, where non-compliant used to be less than 30, it's now less than 40. A level 8 used to be between 30 and 40 points, it's now between 40 and 55 points. And in this era, there was no discounting practices, etc., etc. So ownership wasn't a priority element. You could do a verification without that, and what you get is what you get. Now is, so technically if you don't have ownership, you can do a quick calculation. You need to aim for 55 points because you're going to be discounted to a level 8. Okay, so your strategy needs to be, if you say, I need to do BE and I need to be at least on the playing field, is a level 8 because it's an acceptable level. So no one is saying you must be a level 1 unless your biggest supplier or customer say, hey, can you please be a level 1 or level 3 or level 4, whatever the case, because your competitor can give me a better rating. But yeah, so that's level 8. So you need to aim for 55 points because you'll be discounted to a level 8. Okay. So that's quite important to understand that concept. The discounting, it's a bit of another curveball that they put in the mix, but yeah, one of those things. So that's the big difference. According to me, we really kicked against this because we think it's not actually, if you think about the whole new legislation, there's quite a lot of focus on ownership, not in your business as per se, but also ownership from whom you do business with. And then our argument was based on the concept of broad-based black economic empowerment. Are we actually doing broad-based black economic empowerment, or are we doing narrow-based black economic empowerment? Where a lot of focus is only on equity and control. But yeah, they didn't listen to our comments, and this is obviously, this is now in force. Okay, it's been for, 4 years now. Let's quickly chat about skills development. The reason why I want to chat about this or talk about this is because I think this is if you're going to ever embark on a BBEE journey, this is probably going to be one of the challenges that you're going to sit with and face with. And I think this is probably the biggest challenge that South Africa as a whole sits with is in terms of education. They say, I think the latest figures, our unemployment rate is 27.8%. We all know that's not true. It's close to 40%. If you actually think about your unemployment youth, then not all people are economic active. So, we've got a ticking time bomb in South Africa in terms of from a youth perspective. So that's why President Ramaphosa, he launched the YES program, the Youth Employment Service program. And that's why the BBEE codes are also changing towards incorporating the YES program. We foresee the changes to come into effect in August, September. Actually, the closing date for the comments is tomorrow, so it will take a few months for them to actually work through the comments. Now, I'm quite in favor of that because I think it actually gives a company a chance to actually gain a level again from a skills development. So if you lost a level from an ownership perspective, but you comply to the new proposed changes in skills development, you can actually make up that level again that you've lost, which is quite an incentive, which I think is just fair. But anyway, not what I'm thinking. But if you look at skills development expenditure, it's quite big targets. If you look at generic, okay, and I'm referring to generic entities here, larger than 50 mil turnover. If you look at the agri point, skills development expenditure for black people, so it's black people, okay, not only black employees. So that's 6% of levelable amount for 8 points. Let's talk about 6% of payroll. Okay, and that 6% is divided then into your economic active population demographics in your province of operation. Let's say Western Cape, obviously in this case. So if you only spend training on African males, and you get to your 6% for argument, you're not going to get 8 points. You're going to only get a pro rata of 8 points because you will be capped. Because African males does not make up the entire demographics of the Western Cape. Does that make sense? So you have to, they are enforcing you to try and split your initiatives on, obviously, in the Western Cape, for instance, your demographics is coloured males, coloured females, African males, African females, Indian males, Indian females. Indian males and Indian females of the 8 points only make up 0.03 points, for argument's sake. So, this equation, now people don't like it. I don't like it personally either because now you are actually focusing initiatives on, but this is what they want. Training to black disabled people. Okay, so disabled people, you look at 0.3% of levelable amount for 4 points. Now, from a strategy point of view, if you really look at skills development, so I enjoy saying, take up the bottom-up approach, not the top-down approach. So focus on here, and that will filter into those categories as well. But for 0.3% compared to 6%, you can get half the points of the 6%. So that makes sense. And if you don't have black employees, you can have black people, disabled people. Okay. So from a strategy point of view, that's crucial. Learnerships, apprenticeships, and internships. Now, now they say, okay, we would like you to actually invest in black people on learnerships, apprenticeships, and internships. Now, depending on your industry, it is quite difficult sometimes to obtain these kind of learning programs. Okay, if I just take the wine industry, for instance, it's very difficult to get a learnership on working in the wine cellar. You know, there's a lot of training academies out there. They are popping up like, yeah, because this is a huge gap in the market, and we've got a huge unemployment rate, and we've got people that actually are sitting there and say, please sponsor me, I would like to be educated. And these academies actually, you can actually invest in black people, they source the black people for you, etc., etc. And you can get points there on a learnership, apprenticeship, internship. Okay. What you obviously would like to do is to say, I would like to train my own employees on these kind of learnership programs. The one thing that one needs to take into account is obviously what kind of learnership program. Like I always say in my kind of business, there's no point in me training my staff in terms of, no point in putting one of my staff members on a winemaking learnership. You know, I need to go business-wise. So it's very difficult sometimes to get a learnership program that's aligned to your core activities. And as you can see, they say 85% is scarce and critical skills. That's your skills within your industry. So if you look at the Agri-CETA and the Food Bev CETA, they will actually list what is, according to your CETA, classified as scarce and critical skills. And they would like you to invest training in terms of those skills. So it makes it is a challenge, but it is doable. So 2.5% of employees for 4 points, and over here it's number of black unemployed people. So this black people can be unemployed people or employed. And then this category can't be the same people than over there. You can't double dip there. Okay, if that makes sense. So technically it's 5% of total employees for 4 points. So if you, and that is people participate in training specified. So that's any training, that category over there, but that is being amended. Okay, so please don't focus your strategy only on that, because that category is going to become exactly the same as that in terms of learnerships, apprenticeships, and internships. So if you, from a strategy point of view, if you have a look and you say, well, how much employees do you, well, what's my total number of employees? If I take 5% and I really categorize it correctly, you know, on black people, black unemployed people, black employees, whatever the case might be, you can actually get 12 out of 20. Because you can get the 4 points there, or close to the 4 points, and definitely the 4 points there. And that is not by spending the major amount of 6% of livable amount. Now, I'm not saying don't spend 6%. Okay. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm just trying to say is, if people say you must spend 6%, that's not true. Okay. If you want to get full points on your skills development scorecard, yes, then you need to spend 6%. Okay. So why have they incorporated this, and why am I talking about skills development? Because if any business owner thinks about any initiative saying, what's in it for me? If I put something out, what am I getting back? That's business. Sometimes you say, I'm doing this because I would like to do it, and that's a socioeconomic development element. That's why that is there. But I mean, in terms of skills development, because sometimes it's got quite a big impact on cash flow. And Section 12H of the SARS income tax actually provides concessions for investing in learnerships and apprenticeships. Well, more learnerships as such, where they say you can actually deduct, I think it's 120,000 Rand now from your taxable income. Well, it's actually 28% of 120,000 if you invest in a disabled learnership. And in a disabled learnership, speaking, I don't know if there's any SDFs in the room, but you're talking about 150, 160,000 Rand. Okay, that's 28%. Obviously, that only plays a role if you are a profit-driven entity. So, for argument's sake, I work with a lot of consultants, and where the consultants actually structured their client's portfolio or skills development, where at the end of the day, after the tax concessions, they actually get very close to full points on the skills development scorecard, but their net cost, obviously you're not claiming money back, it's just a tax incentive, but their net cost is a fraction of what they have actually claimed. Okay, so they claim a certain amount, but their net cost to the company in terms of from a bottom line perspective, it's a fraction. It's actually ridiculous if you think about it. But because it was structured in the way in terms of investments in learnerships and apprenticeships and, well, not internships, you can't get a tax concession for an internship. You can actually, it will flow down there, and you can get the tax concessions. So please, when you ever compile a strategy or think about BEE and you think about training, don't think about just this is, boom, a direct expense off my bottom line. Yes, it will have an impact on the cash flow, definitely. BEE, this individual, a gentleman in Durban that puts it BEE inflation. He refers to the new codes as BEE inflation. And BEE is a cost. It's going to be a cost. It's becoming a process where you have to, if you're serious, if you need to do it, or you're thinking of embarking on that journey, it's something you have to budget for. It's part of a normal company-driven expense. So like you pay your auditors every year, you're going to have to pay a verification agency every year to do your verification. And you have to think about how to actually strategize, because to work on this and try to do that overnight is impossible. Okay, so just quickly, in terms of the skills development for Agri, for the QSEs, as you can see, that's lower targets because you're smaller businesses. So they're actually just focusing on 3%, and then they look at unemployed. I'll just put that in green because that's not in the normal codes. 1% for 5, and then for females, 1% for 10 points. So as you can see, there's a bit of a difference from the Agri code to the generic code. But the principles are still the same. But as you can see, they're not putting extra criteria for learnerships. Okay, I will email this presentation to Catherine. You can have a look. I'm not going to go through the important definitions. We don't have time, but that is quite important for if you embark on a strategy. I'm just going to skip. I'm running out of time. There's some required criteria that you have to comply to from a Skills Development Levies Act point of view for skills development to actually claim skills development points. So please ensure that you comply to that. That's just listed on this. Just pressure points quickly. Let's run through those. Okay. Important is to establish the correct sector to determine the code the client needs to be verified against. Okay, so you need to know, but I'm sure we're all in agreement this will probably be the Agri sector code. Ensure that the client complies to the requirements for allowing points. Okay, there's certain criteria. If you don't comply, you're not going to gain points. Ensure that your training is done in line with what we refer to the learning program matrix. Okay, important. Don't just assume that any training will be counted for BEE, because that's not the fact. Okay, there's certain criteria for training, so please don't assume. Informal training, in-house training is limited. So if you say, listen, we do a lot of in-house training, it will be limited, okay, to 15% of recognizable spend. Know the skills development, understand the skills development scorecard, understand what is skills. If training providers are used, use providers with the correct BEE status. Ensure you are informed regarding the interpretation of your verification agency. The biggest challenge in the industry is different interpretations from verification agency to verification agency. If you use consultants, please use competent consultants. And the reason why I say that, because consultants are not regulated. Okay, so beware of your cowboys, people that just wake up, read the BEE legislation and say, I can consult you. Okay, so please verify their credentials. And fronting is real. Stay away from it. Okay, there's companies which are deemed BEE professionals that will encourage fronting. Please stay away from it. It's not in the best interest of your company, your reputation, and I just think the longer people are going to front, the longer BEE is going to be here. If you know, however you feel about it, but it's because of fronting that they've shifted the goalposts. It's because of fronting that there's a BEE commissioner. It's because of fronting that the verification agencies are way more strict than previously during an audit or verification.